big cranes in it right now. We've got a photo of the site, actually here, that using, this is A1, marked A1 already, for visualization of the existing redevelopment plan area as it's currently configured. It includes technically this triangle right here, which currently does not have an envisioned purpose, but it is part of the original site before this was subdivided and split off here. So this is just for visualization's sake. And Todd, if you could just, so I just don't want to worry about your back here. And then I've got a little overlay thing here to help us follow along when needed with the revisions to the plan. Oh, good. This is with the I made this high tech with the with that little like pen thing with the whiteout.
High tech.
Yeah, very high tech. So it's not even close enough to pinch it down.
Hold the arm on.
Close enough. All right. So I do this because I feel like at certain points when we're talking, it'll be good to visualize. Mind you, I just want to preface that this part of the area is also in the plan. Down here, the what's currently where Clyde's is and where these other buildings are. But we don't know exactly how that's going to end up being broken out long term. And so I kind of highlighted where we can anticipate certain parts of the plan going forward. H1 is already the first building that's currently under construction right now. The property with Johnson Ruckers and a million other partners project. H2, which is sort of the purpose of the amendments to the plan tonight, is the Nokia Bell Labs building that people have been discussing. This is another parcel here that's an access road that sort of exists now, except it's kind of dirty, but you can kind of make it out on the Google Maps aerial here, where the dirt road is. It'll turn into a real access road, but it'll be a private road for deliveries and folks coming to the site. And this is a large, they're calling a paseo, which would be a pedestrian walkway through here, through the middle. And it'll have outdoor seating for the cafes, restaurants, etc. That'll be renting in certain components of these buildings. And with that, I'll just get into the plans and the changes. So on page 6 and a couple of places throughout the plan, there's some changes that cease references to a block 17 and block 18. Those were the blocks as the site existed when this plan was originally designed. But post the first approval and some subdivisions here, this has now become lot 17.01 and 17.02. So lot 18 no longer exists, and I guess technically not into 17. And so there's certain places where you'll see a little markouts that say 17.01 or 17.02. It's just cleaning up clarification in the plan. Moving forward through the next bit here with permitted uses, the Nokia Bell Labs folks are intending to put a museum that will be publicly accessible in their building. I felt that the underlying zoning and the redevelopment plan were compliant enough that that wouldn't be an issue, but to avoid any headaches in the future, we're looking to explicitly add museums as a permitted use. We're adding specifically the pedestrian access and vehicular access roads as permitted uses specifically. And we're also exempting them, as they'll also be both privately held, we're exempting them from lot size and other zoning, like bulk standard limitations for the developer to have the dynamic ability to design them as they need. And mind you, the access road doesn't have to be up to city standards because it's not going to be a city-owned or maintained road. It's a private access road. So we don't have to worry about that, and we would be carving that out. And the accessory uses, we would be using the typical terminology that's any use typically subordinate to the above uses, but given the fact that they're going to be doing a lot of R&D at this site, they will be needing oxygen and nitrogen tanks as permitted uses or accessory structures for H2 as a requirement outside. It's something that the project needs. I carved out the outdoor cafe sections from the plan, not because they're not going to be allowed. You don't even need the underlying zoning. The city laws allow for them. So this is sort of just removal of clutter from the plan for sort of clarity purposes, but the outdoor cafes will be permitted even if it's not specifically in here because it's regulated elsewhere. On page 15, we are going to be striking, and I guess this is also page 16, we'll be striking the components related to the overall plan area versus the individual lots. Originally, it was adopted as a vision that the lot would have a certain standard, and then each individual lots could have differing standards that could be higher or lesser than, as long as the aggregate was blah, blah, blah. You see where I'm going. But since that happened, the underlying zoning has changed and is in line with the individual lot standards. So there is no point in having a less intense overall plan area than what would be permitted under the underlying zoning. So we're just striking the overall plan area sections from the plan. And we're going with the standards of the individual lots for the rest of the site. One relatively major change that you would probably have noticed here is that there is a maximum building height going from 350 to 500 feet. The H2 building is actually probably going to be somewhere around 250 feet plus or minus 10 feet. It's not actually going to be quite that tall. But it is envisioned that the H3 building, which will be back here somewhere, which will be a mixed-use building, probably right now the things I've seen online from articles and whatnot would have it be about 5 stories or so of commercial, medical office, something like that, with 37 or so stories of residential above. Probably, but
Just a quick question on that.
yeah.
I think I remember I was talking about one time is that it would have to be stepped back when it's at height.
This like specifically says no skyline setback for the plan area.
Gotcha.
Already in there. Now, as far as I know, the designs for this would be, and I'm just going to kind of sketch on here real quick with my pen. I hope you can see it. If it was hypothetically like the bottom floors were like this, right? Basically lot line to lot line, that the residential component would be a very tall, skinny bit in the middle. So it would functionally, right now, I think the current iterations that are being kicked around would functionally have some sort of step back to it. Because I think that the numbers being kicked around are 200 to 250 unit range for the building, even though it's very tall. It would actually have fewer apartments than pretty much any of the buildings that we've approved in the last like 12 months. But also, if there's any place to really go this tall, the hub area right next to the train station is pretty optimal. I think we could go higher than 500 if we needed to. I wouldn't have any objection to that. This is sort of where they're operating in, and for purposes of controlling what's anticipated to come and projecting, it's good to set those limits and adjust as needed, but I wouldn't have any objection to even a taller building going right here at this location of the city. It'd probably be the most optimal place for one to go. All right, then page 17 and 18, removal of some of this is also what I'm considering clutter removal regarding parking requirements for all sorts of other residential uses that are not going to get built at this site. So we leave behind only the residential and mixed use standard, but we remove the car share components because car share just doesn't really work that well, and it's really hard to get car share systems that are highly utilized and operated for buildings like this, and there's not really a purpose in including that as a hard and fast requirement to get those parking standards. forward. Bike standards are being tweaked. The projected standards that we have here in the plan for H2 would anticipate that we would have about 50 interior parking spaces, bike parking spaces for workers and staff at the building, and 20 outside public spaces, ballpark, somewhere in the 40 to 50 and 18 to 20 bike parking range. That said, my understanding is the developer is going for 50 spaces for bike parking internally, as that will be one of their checklist items, as they're trying to get the building to be certified LEED Platinum. And that will be one of the items for them to do so. Okay, so this is one component here about off-street loading. Loading areas may encroach into the space typically used for sidewalk, provided the sidewalk access is provided through private property via permanent easement agreed to by the city council. So the reason for this component here is that there's an envisioning that in this sidewalk area up here would be the optimal loading zone. And hold on, actually, I have a file here, it might be easier to see. And it would cut in somewhere here like this, and that would eat into the sidewalk, but that the applicant would then grant an easement through here to make sure that the sidewalk is not broken and it is contiguous, even if it essentially goes onto private property through this stretch here to continue back onto this connection here. That's all. So we wouldn't lose the space, it would just be arranged differently to accommodate an off-street loading, or an on-street loading space for deliveries to the site. Page 29, tweaks flag regulations, how many flags, the size of the flags. Apparently Nokia Bell Labs is big into flags, and they want to have a few flags, I think, right here near the front. And so this sort of accommodates the height and the standards for a couple of flags that they want to put up. And I think this is the last one. Yeah, so the last one, page 49. So originally it had been envisioned that this would be parked on both sides here. Right now, there's only parking here on this stretch. There will not be parking here as part of this development that's happening here. There's no real way to fit any parking here. There's no parking here on this side already. And it's anticipated we may lose some parking spaces here to accommodate a loading bay in this part of the building to come. It may not be all of the spaces, it may be half of them, 2/3 of them. I'm not entirely sure, depending on the movements for a 53-foot truck to get into this potential loading bay. But so it's just removing references to that there will be parking on both sides of the street, because there's the 4 potential stretches, there's only parking there on one of them now, and it will probably be curtailed to some extent to accommodate the loading of the building. And those are changes proposed to the Farron redevelopment.
Anyone have any questions? Ms. Gardner?
You said something about exterior tanks would be a requirement for
Yes.
Nokia.
Yes.
What was I mean, we don't know because we haven't seen site plans yet, but it seems like an odd thing to have in this, in a downtown environment, just saying. And is there any hazard associated with that?
They'll have to have it secured with whatever requirements are of state protection, federal protection. Any gases in a tank could be hazardous in some kind of capacity, even sort of the inert ones.
But I'm assuming they just have to be exterior to the building.
Right, they'll have to be exterior because they'll have to be vented, and part of the safety is that they can vent into the atmosphere if there's a leak or a depressurization, so they don't explode or have any issues. They'll be abutting their new, they will be screened. And they'll be right next to their new world headquarters that they probably don't want to blow up.
Would hope so,
Yeah, it's anticipated that they will be located in this area here, next to the access road, the private access road, with some distance to the Paseo and to the sidewalk area here,
tanks are probably not nitrogen tanks,
Oxygen and nitrogen tanks.
which right now, just so you know, is Robert Wood Johnson has those on Route 27 now, or Front Street now, at that loading dock area, so I would assume it's something very similar to that.
I mean, Mr. Chair, if I may just sort of think about it, it's difficult to attract not just an office space, but a biochemical, biopharma, biotechnology laboratory, and then say, sorry, you can't have office space, you can't have an accident tank. So I think when you sort of program the zone to have this sort of things, these are things we just have to deal with and find a way to make it look nice and make it safe, and it's not something that we don't already have at hospital sites already.
Right, and knowing that they have to comply with all the standards that are out there for them to comply with.
I'm sure it will be very.
I'm sure they will, too.
Rutgers has them now too, so.
Any other questions or anything from the board? Yeah, no, question.
You talked about the potential location of the tanks being off the access road.
Yes.
So I'm assuming there's going to be delivery back there as well for
Um,
those tanks, or will they be delivered?
no. My understanding is that the truck, whatever services them, will come from whatever roadside, probably here, and will probably stop in this area and fill the tanks.
So what's going to be delivered at the loading area that's cutting the sidewalk up?
Over here,
Yeah.
this is more like general office supplies and, there might be like restaurants and cafes and stuff, and so food deliveries. And then the other big bay here will be sort of like whatever top secret stuff that they're working on in their R&D labs.
Okay. So the deliveries up in the front of, well, calling we'll say Front Street or H2, you have like food deliveries, you have office deliveries. Those will be parked on the sidewalk or?
No, the sidewalk would then be sort of like scooped out.
Okay.
There would, this part of, concrete would
Be
be
like a
scooped
pull-off
out.
area.
Right, and then this would be either, the building's either set back, and so there's concrete here, and so you're connected through, or maybe there's an overhang, and so it's concrete underneath, and you just walk under the overhang, kind of, let's say, like Plum 2 or one of the buildings on Somerset Street that have the overhang. But so it would, like, you just have to swerve around, well, I don't know, swerve is maybe too strong of a word, but you would just scoop this part out.
And the point was that it would be continuous for pedestrians to continue.
Exactly.
Makes sense. And it would be off the street, it wouldn't block or?
Well, that's also the point, right? It would be,
Yeah,
since it
okay.
carves out, it has not,
Just trying
it
to-
does not block traffic as people are doing loading and unloading in that area.
Sometimes the way to think of it is a bump in, sort of bumps into the sidewalk and vehicles can pull off, like the right of way traffic just continue.
Yeah, my biggest concern would be having a line of trucks if there's multiple deliveries extending into the busiest intersection.
Right, so I think the key to that is to make sure that that bumping has enough depth so that multiple vehicles can deliver and service at once.
Yeah, I think that they're primarily trying to lean on deliveries back here, but they see a need that there will be
UPS
most
guy.
likely
Okay.
something. And mind you, it might, instead of being here, the scoop might be over here, right? It could be in a different location, it's just sort of being envisioned right here, right now.
Got it.
Is that access road going to be one way?
I don't know. I don't know. It depends on how wide it is and what it's trying to accommodate.
Gotcha. Okay.
I'm thinking that it might be two-way. But if it's private, if it's going to be a private road, the standards are different than if it's going to be one of our roads.
The only question I would have with the access road is, because obviously it's a private road, and I would think that they would want to limit access to it of other people getting in that road, there might be bollards or something like that that are brought down, vehicles are brought in and moved back up, some version of that, so that way it just doesn't become common traffic going through.
That would be worth bringing up during testimony to ask them how they intend to handle or control that.
Okay.
And will it be wide enough and everything for emergency vehicles?
The road?
Yeah.
That's almost always going to be.
Yeah, I think that
That's always gonna be
the
close all
numbers
the time.
that I heard were 20 to 25 feet, which you should be able to put down the truck with the outriggers, and it's just, you wouldn't have two flow traffic, but you would certainly, I think, be able to put the fire truck there.
Realistically, it wouldn't matter so much because the rest of the sites, without the access road, we still have plenty of other places to put vehicles. That would be a bonus. That wouldn't be the only way to do it. That would be a bonus on top of what would be required on the city streets. So it would be good, just a nicer thing.
Sure. Okay, anyone else have any questions?
Just one other thing, this isn't, I don't think this is related to the proposed amendments, but you mentioned across the street from that bump-in, redevelopment.
Sorry, over here?
Yeah,
We approved
did I hear that?
Yeah, we
We
approved
approved
Oh, that was part of what we.
That was in either October or September.
Okay.
11 spring,
Got it.
yeah.
That's a parking.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you, Jim.
I think you should open the public.
Oh, yes, sir. Anyone from the public have any questions or comments on this amendment to the term redevelopment? Seeing none, we can close the public portion. I guess we need a motion.
I'll just go back.
You know, motion for a recommendation.
Motion would be to recommend this change to the city council.
Okay. Motion to recommend?
Make a motion.
You guys are moving way too fast. Like, get over
Can't
here.
do everything.
I said it would be an hour and 7 minutes.
All right, so Chris with the motion.
Second,
Only for a second.
I'll second.
All right, Alina Melendez,
Yes.
Francisco Ludwig,
Yes.
Cristela Tella,
Yes.
Anna Lopez,
Yes.
Yes.
Glenn Blackwell, thank you, Joshua Beef,
Yes.
Bob Cardica,
Yes.
John Cox.
Yes.